Anyway, yeah, if we're done there, I guess I kind of thought we'd move on to something else that I think is really going to be a big deal, and it's going to really affect the amateur motocross scene in a huge way. And I don't think we know all of the ramifications yet, and that'd be that Aidan Zing situation.
So yeah, there was that article in USA Today that painted a pretty dark picture, and I think it really polarized people. But the data is not good, and that I ended up talking to the reporter who wrote that. They had connection through my brother, and they had started that effort before Aidan Zing passed away, and it really stemmed from really the data, and it's not good. That I think they said fatality-wise, 14 times more dangerous than football and that. And then the Aidan Zing death happened in the middle of it, and we already knew before the article and before Aidan's unfortunate incident there.
Can I ask you one quick thing, really quick? You said that the guy that's writing the article had already started compiling, or who?
Yeah,
he had. I didn't know that part.
So, and they were like prepping. There was incidents at Loretta's, if I remember it correctly. It has something to do with Loretta's, so they already started prepping this, and Aidan Zing was somebody they were actually aware of, if I understood correctly, like just because he's a prominent amateur motocross. So they kind of ran into it. They had some background in racing, and so that they've written 2 articles already, and the first one was just about Aidan Zing, but then the second one, was basically all that data that they had developed before and after Aidan Zing's passing away. So it was in the works, but I think that we could say it was triggered by Aidan Zing, but I don't think it definitely wasn't. Like I said, they were already compiling. Plus, like anybody who's paid any attention to the sport knows that injury rates have gone up, fatalities are, right. Particularly if we go back to the 80s, 70s and 80s, when there was so many more tracks, so many more riders, so many more bikes, but we just didn't have this level of incidents. We also didn't have the insurance problems, and people, like, we could discuss lawsuits and insurance, but we're not targeted. We're no different than any other sport. It's just that the accident, if we weren't having the accidents, we wouldn't have the insurance problems. So,
sure.
Doesn't this story, though, seem so random? I mean, because motocross still, to the mainstream, sporting, world, is still a fringe sport. And it'd be like someone coming out and saying, there's a lot of people playing polo that has shoulder injuries and head injuries. It's like, is the majority of your readers really care? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's such a fringe. I mean, how many of your readers actually are engaged in the sport of motocross to where that would generate this kind of hoopla? So I kind of question the reasoning behind it.
One thing I do want to comment on that is I think there's a basic misunderstanding about motocross, supercross, and arena cross from the general public, because even in the article they called it a dirt track, and that's such a random term that there's a lot of people saying things and commenting on things that really don't have the education about that subject to maybe comment. They do have some feelings, but that's not always the best way to make decisions. So, go ahead, Aaron.
How many times have you told someone that you raced motocross, and they're like, "Oh, you do all the backflips and stuff?"
Right.
And you're like, "No, I don't do backflips."
Every time I get on the chairlift and I'm riding up with somebody and they see my number on my skis or something and ask about motocross, and it's like, nope.
we don't do backflips.
We're not those guys.
But that's just what I was like wondering why a publication like USA Today would put, an article together about basically a fringe sport that really, probably 99.9% of the readers don't have a clue about. So it's like, what's their motivation?
Well, I think I have some insights into that because, my brother is a lifelong journalist. And honestly, I think if you just kind of start studying the field, some of the stuff but is apparent. But honestly, your point's super valid, Chip. And I think that's kind of at the heart of it in a couple of ways. One is that why would somebody do it? Well, honestly, because they don't necessarily, not every article is written with intent or some goal. It's human interest. I mean, they got to write things that people are interested in. And honestly, it becomes very interesting when you start looking at the data, and there's so many different assets or aspects of it that are interesting, and and what he wrote in the article made a bunch of people mad, but it was all accurate. It's predominantly a youth sport. And I don't even know if this point was made, but we know it to be true. And it's part of the reason it's interesting is because it's a youth sport, but the parents of most of the racers have no idea how the sport works, which is to your point, Chip, that people don't know the sport. And then also, I think really significant is because people don't know the sport and insurance companies aren't going to hire people to investigate the sport, they're not going to differentiate us. And so right in South Dakota, we've had probably 15 tracks shut down. And I can tell you, like Volga, I don't mention all of them that were ridiculous, but Volga was one of them, Grandma's was another one. They were just so incredibly dangerous. And when I look at them and I look at the Gypsies track, and I'm like, there's no way we want to be grouped with those tracks. I think the data from our track is since we built the new track, but I think we've only had one ambulance day in 10 years, right?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been one of our probably main concerns is try to make the track as safe as possible and adaptable to as many different riding levels as possible.
Why do you think those tracks do that? Do they do it? I mean, what would be the reasoning? Because the majority of the people are people like me that go out and I do it, I've done it for fun and, don't expect to ever be a pro or anything like that. So why would they go do that where they're alienating, a huge portion of the riding community, Well,
to me, I think that it's part of it is they see it on TV. So why not? If they have a loader or whatever, they see what they do on TV, which is designed for sensationalism, and even the very best. We're 2 races in, and what do we got at the pro level? We've got like 6 guys out, 2 races in. So obviously there's an element there that doesn't add up, right?
Right.
So I think there's that, but then I think there's the ego and the youth of the sport. That if we look at a guy if he's 18 years old and he's the fastest guy here today, he must know what he's talking about.
Right.
Yeah. Where else would we listen to an 18-year-old on anything? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's a lot of it. But
and that's when you hear all the time. You'll hear, well, the pros are even saying this, and it's like, well, that's probably the last place we want to go ask questions is the pros. Quite frankly, motocross is one of those sports. It's grown to become a sport where, we're raising narcissists. I hate to say that, but many times these are kids that have never been not always, but these are kids that have not been part of a team sport, and so they've never learned that sacrifice for the team thing. They've never learned that thing. Now they understand sacrifice, but it's for them. And
right.
Motocross is a one-on-one sport, and I'm not grouping everybody in this, but we watched the sport get more and more that way. They've been the sole center of attention in this sport. Now they're the fast guy, and they must be an expert. And there's nobody to question them on the racetrack. even the old guys that used to be fast, they still can't beat them. So, you know, they're obviously the best. They've got to be the greatest answer to, you know, safety and how to build a motocross track and that kind of thing. So,
and you see that pattern almost everywhere.
Right.
And then when you don't see it, then the tracks are the opposite.
Right.
You know, like Sturgis, like Mankato, like Meadow Valley, the tracks are so different than sort of these typical small club tracks where the fast guy's dad is building the track and he's putting obstacles in that the second fastest guy can't make.
Right.
And then everybody's getting hurt, you know, and then we're hurting everybody, you know,
So do you think like a lot of the tracks, they'll have like a peewee track, they'll have a vet track, and then they'll have, you know, the advanced track. Is that, I mean, what do you think of that?
Here's what I think of that. Here's what I think of that. If you have the room, if you have the land, I think that's a great thing. Typically, though, you're not going to have that. Most places aren't going to have that. And if you're going to use your land that you do have and build the best venue you can, I think what you really need to do is build, you know, a track that meets all of those people's needs. And and there's really, that's a very simple thing to do. It's really not that hard to do, and really comes down to the ego thing that Aaron was talking about. You need to get that stuff out of the way, and you really need to look down. In my opinion, what it comes down to, a racetrack, is it racy? Because the bottom line is, you could have a grass track that doesn't have any jumps and still have a great racetrack if you can make it racy, and that really captures the sport, the essence of the sport. Now, I of course want jumps and I want features, but you know, when it really comes down to it, your motocross, not necessarily talking about supercross or arena cross, but motocross, the most pure essence of it is putting together this straightaway to this corner, the corner out of that straightaway or out of that corner to the next corner, and so forth, all the way down. And that's what motocross is really about. And
I'm sorry. And historically, the jumps were just adding fun.
That's right.
But is it adding all the risk? Is it? I mean, where's the risk coming from? I don't know if the data's out there, but are most people getting hurt on jumps, or are they getting hurt on the high speed areas? I mean, where jumps.
Yeah. I mean, it's always the jumps. And granted, you get a skewed opinion if you're hanging around Sturgis because injuries are so rare. But like the tracks I've hung around with, like it's always the jumps, and so often it's the same jump over and over and over and over. And that pattern is so common. But to Brett's racy point, like our track is super racy. So many of these, it has to do with the jumps, the jump angle, and the angle of incidence. And we do have that one video that covers that. But the jump angle is huge. And then the length of the jump, to me, is huge.
Right.
The jump phase. Well, our track is racy. Mankato's racy. Lincoln's racy. Meadow Valley's racy. But you go to these tracks that are point-to-point gappers, and they're not racy because every jump has one speed. If you jump 6 feet too far, you're going to pile in, it's going to be a flat land. If you jump 3 feet too short, you're going to go over the bars. And it was funny because me and a guy were at a track not that long ago, and we were just listening to the bikes, and nobody was going over quarter throttle. Because it's like, well, you're just setting up the speed, you make the jump, you know, there's no reason, and then you're right into a corner or another obstacle. And you think about Sturgis in particular, I mean, we're putting the bikes through their paces.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're really building an outdoor bike to race outdoor motocross. You know, I think that's one of the other things that so many people don't understand is a supercross bike is absolutely not the bike that you bring to a motocross track, and vice versa. If you take a bike set up for an outdoor motocross, race and you take it to a supercross track, they're just geared differently. The way the bike delivers the power should be different. I mean, it's not if they're stock, it may not be, but if you're doing some engine work, one thing after
suspension is definitely different.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, there are just so many things there that's kind of how we got to this place. Honestly, is we confused motocross with supercross with arena cross and backyard tracks and considered those all motocross, and they're all completely different. Completely different.
And we're all paying for the same insurance premium regardless of what's going on.
Right.
One interesting point to the vet track, PB track, pro track or whatever is everywhere I've ever gone that has that setup, nobody's riding the pro track.
Right. Yeah.
And we had a great example right in South Dakota with Terrence Hickey's track. Like Terrence has an amazing moto track that gets just wore out. He had, I forget, somebody come in and build that supercross track for him. And it was just always covered with weeds.
Right.
It's no fun and it's dangerous, but.
And we did that before too, when we used to have the supercross track out in the middle that we left up out in the middle of the short track years ago. And just like you said, it doesn't get ridden enough and then ends up being weeds, and then you do have somebody crashing because it's just the maintenance isn't there, and the trail's this wide now. The track may be 15, 16 foot wide, but maybe 20 foot wide, but you can only ride on 3 foot of it because that's all that's been ridden on.
And I think Brett made a great point in one of our discussions about that we've got people, well, on both sides. Maybe Brett, you want to explain that, because I hadn't really thought about it that way, and I came to realize I'm actually one of these people that's off the side, one side in the ditch, and that's not necessarily good either.
Well, I guess what I was saying there is on this whole thing with Aidan Zing, I think, and I'll just say it the way I said it, I think we pretty much have people in both sides of the ditch on this issue instead of on the road. And neither one of those is going to lead to the solutions that we need. We're gonna realize some solutions on either side, but I think the big thing is it's a tragedy. I certainly I do not, some of the things that I may say from here on, I do not want it to sound like I have a cold heart towards this. I feel bad for the family. I feel bad for the friends. I feel bad for Aidan, and that's a terrible situation. At the same time, I feel terrible for the people that are running the races. Some of the people that may or may not have made a lapse of judgment when putting on this race. One of the things that I guess I want to talk about real quickly is, they talk about there's not enough flaggers. Well, according to the promoter, there was 46 flaggers, or maybe it was 48. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that was one of the things I read. And if that's true, I mean, that seems like they were well staffed. Now, were they in the right place? Were they trained well? I don't know. I can't make that judgment. But what I see from this whole thing is this lawsuit, I really wish it wasn't taking place. I wish that, I like them to use this platform to bring safety to the forefront, but it's going to ruin some people's lives. Yes, it's messed up the lives of the family and their loved ones, but I think sometimes when we go to situations like this, and we pursue these lawsuits, and especially when they're monetary lawsuits like this, I think sometimes we get to the point where we really jump, off the bridge and things go in the wrong direction. So I'm going to kind of stop there right there because there's a lot more things I want to say about that, but that's kind of my biggest fear right now, is without taking a good hard look at all the dimensions of this, stopping and looking from it three-dimensionally, and being stuck in our thoughts, I think we're going to miss a bunch of the things that need to be discussed, and hopefully we can get through that tonight. But anyway.
Yeah, it's like, and how do we, without spending too much time on the extremes, like you say, how do we get back on the road, and how do we as a group, and particularly amateur motocross, how do we save our sport?
Right.
And how do we turn this into a continuous improvement project where every track is safer to the point where, it's not just the extreme cases that result in lawsuits, that all these injuries go away. We start to grow the sport, the same kind of energy that we had, in the 70s and 80s, where, like, when I started Moto, the injuries were so rare that it wasn't a big concern for me. And now, like, I get the concern. So how do we, and I'm not saying, let's just go back. I'm just saying, like anything, we could do better.
Yeah.
And how do we do that,
I mean, that's it right there. That's the right there in a nutshell. And I think it's coming down to building the culture around motocross, not getting so far into the safety thing that you lose the essence of the sport, but there is common sense, safety type things. And, number one, I think it comes down to the track. And it comes down to being educated about motocross instead of saying, well, my son's getting into motocross. I used to ride a dirt bike when I was, a teenager, and I got a skid steer, so let's go push up some jumps, and first thing you know, hey, let's put on some races here. Well, it's a lot more of a science than that. In a motocross track, and I'm sorry to keep going on this, it comes down to the features right off the bat and how you put them together.
What about just like your own personal guide? It's like you with being an advanced skier, Brett. You said you've done heli skiing and everything like that, where you're skiing off of cliffs and everything like that. Because you do that and get hurt, should they shut down the whole ski resort, including the bunny slopes?
Well, I mean, that's
at some point you have to say, anything. I get up out of my chair and I walk out the house, I assume some risk. Driving to town, going down the steps on an icy day, whatever it may be. So it's just we're a litigious. We are a society of lawsuits.
And
I actually,
go ahead.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
A couple of things. I mean, and I get where you're coming from, but I believe that's the culture, the heart of the culture shift we need. And one of them is, like, people, I hear this all the time, we're a litigious lawsuit, or a litigious society, and we absolutely are going the other way. It was much easier to sue people civilly 10 years ago, 15 years ago than it is today. But I think the heli skiing is a perfect example, because the culture in skiing is the opposite of motocross. The culture in skiing is that there is a great amount of respect for the experienced skier. And I mean, there just is, and especially when you get to, like, thinking of riding the tram at Big Sky. When you ride the tram, like, everybody in there is a good skier, and honestly, there's a ton of respect for the older skiers that have been doing this a while. And I haven't ridden I've only ridden the tram maybe 30 times or something like that. I'm not even that many. And there's been many times when there was some old dude in there, and just the fact that he was there, I mean, old, and I'm old, but I'm saying older than me, it was in the tram, like, people are asking him questions. The culture is the opposite. Like, can you imagine going, me rolling up to a bunch of A-class guys and they start asking me for ski riding advice? Never going to happen. The culture is the opposite. And actually, Big Sky is a great example too, where you can't not just anybody can go anywhere. There's rules of who can go where. And to some extent, the heli skiing thing, or maybe the tram, is a great example where it's like, if, like, we're going to have we're going to have this big sky ski area, and everybody is going to ride the tram today, sometime. Like, whether you're 5 years old or it's your first day, we're going to throw you on the tram, and you got to get down somehow. Because ultimately, that's what we're doing with our tracks. Like, we build something. We don't say,
it's one size fits all.
One size fits all.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to, and that's just a fundamental difference from closed course to something like skiing, which is open course. So with closed course riding, like, you have, unless you want to get injure your sport out of business, you have to consider everybody that's going to go on there. Because and I'm sorry to ramble here, but I hear this all the time. Well, there's risk. Moto's a tough sport. I'm willing to take the risk. Here's the key. We can't do this without insurance.
Right.
So the bottom line is, when you go separate your shoulder or break your leg, not only you have to take the risk of that happening, you have to take the outcome, which is, I just separated my shoulder on this track. I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm going to hope it heals up. Because the problem is, the second you jump in that ambulance, data's logged, and that affects everybody. And then and one of these lawsuits that happened in California, it wasn't the parents that sued the track, and it was one of the tracks that got closed. They got sued by the insurance company, and that's more and more common. So it's like,
so why does the ski resorts, which obviously bring in a lot more people than motocross tracks, there's a lot more skiers than there are motocrossers, how are they able to get insurance?
They're not negligent.
Well, that's why your ski pass, if you want to go skiing at Jackson or Big Sky, is $270 or $300 a day. To both your points, the culture is completely different. Like in skiing, every skier that's a seasoned, experienced skier is going to convey to anybody that's not is, listen, you could die today. This is serious. This is not something that you take lightly. Just because you skied these groomed runs at your home mountain or wherever you've gone, you've bombed straight down, didn't know how to make a turn, doesn't mean you're ready for this. Because going fast doesn't make you a great skier. It's like being able to control your speed through your turn shape. And, understanding where we're at, understanding the environment we're at, and respecting the environment that we're at, that's kind of one of the cultures of skiing that's just passed down. Motocross, on the other hand, is like, hey, man, I'm crazy. How many guys have you heard that? I don't ride anymore because I'm so crazy. Every time I ride, I'm so fast, I get hurt, so I quit doing it. You hear all these vet riders doing it. It's like, well, that means you were never any good. That's all I can tell you there is, if you got hurt every time you rode, and you might have won the race, but then you might have crashed. Well, guess what? You were never any good. You were never.
Or you're just really dumb.
You were really dumb. The sport's about longevity. You should be able to ride a dirt bike till you're really old. There's no reason. It's something you should be able to do your whole life. It's a lifetime sport, just like skiing or any other lifetime sport. And so there's that. We definitely have to have personal responsibility. You can't let your son go out there and race if you haven't been working at this at home. If your son cannot pick up the bike when it falls over, if you haven't done this in the yard, I made my kids pick up their bike in the yard all day long until they could get it to where they could pick it up. If you bring your kid to the track and he falls over and can't get it up, you haven't done your job as a parent. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that might sound mean, but as a motocross parent, that's one of the things we have to convey to the people coming up. If you haven't done that, they are not ready to race.
Yeah,
I agree.
See, at that point, so often they tip over and they just stand on the track. They don't even get off the track. That adds to the danger. In fact, it creates danger where there probably shouldn't be any.
Right. Anytime we get on a motocross track, you might die. And that's one of the things that we've kind of been considering. We've been looking at this. So if a waiver really doesn't mean anything, one of the things we're looking at is there will be a contract. You actually have to sign a contract, and we've got we're working on some legal work with that right now, if you want to ride on our track. Because
Right.
number one, there's not going to be any tracks if you can do a frivolous lawsuit. Now, I'm not saying this is frivolous, but the thing
Right.
that I hate to see is once you open the gate to things like this, that's when the frivolous lawsuits do happen. And so that's the other side of this.